Okay, so today I would like to introduce you to some of the core concepts in business ethics. Now, there's actually a whole load of definitions that I kind of want to go through into today's tutorial, and we're going to go through them one at a time, but I want to do that in a context. I think sometimes we think of our current kind of economic system as the one that is kind of naturally there. And I think a historical perspective will give us an idea of actually how it emerged through kind of historical accident, as it were. So we're going to start by looking at the system that kind of came before capitalism, before our kind of our current system. Now, capitalism, just to define that at the beginning, capitalism is the idea that a business is owned and produces profit for the owner. Now, of course, in order to fully understand that, we're going to need to define profit, we're going to need to define owner, and we're going to need to define business. And as you can see, we're going to do that over here. Owner is shareholder in this case. But let's do that as we go through. I want to start now, as I said I would, with a brief history lesson. And every brief history lesson starts quite correctly, I think, with a castle. Now, now this castle, which you can see is fully functioning, has peasants working on its land. Now, interestingly, these peasants are actually the owners of that land. They run the land for themselves, and then the lord in the castle takes some of their food. This is what is called feudalism, which occurred in the medieval period. I haven't given that a date because it actually went over a very long period, and it's hard to date it. Now, feudalism slowly changed with the birth of, of global trade. Global trade allowed the lord to sell, say, sheep, for instance, from his castle to get rid of the peasants and instead to sell sheep around the world elsewhere, or wool specifically, for a large amount of money, places where it's harder to find wool. So as this occurred, this is called the enclosures. So the enclosures were a move away from the feudal system where you have kind of peasants working on the land, who are farming the land and digging it and so on, and producing like turnips and things. You move away from this sort of thing towards a system that doesn't require these guys anymore. Instead of them working their own land and then giving the Lord money, the Lord just takes all of the land and puts sheep on it instead. Now you've got sheep on the land, you can suddenly sell the wool for a lot more money and make significantly more capital. So capital is simply the money, the thing that allows you to do these sorts of ownership things. But of course, now you've got a peasant class that is entirely dispossessed. They're no longer here. They don't own any land. They're out of the picture. There are sheep there instead, in the picture. And that's where we come to the invention of this, of machinery. Now, if you have capital, you can own the machinery. The machinery that allows you to produce significantly more stuff. And suddenly these peasants become useful again in the form of workers or employees. So an employee is somebody who works for, someone who works for pay. They don't own the business. Instead, they are selling their labor. One of the big differences between kind of capitalism and feudalism, let's say, is that in a feudal society, the peasants own the land, they work the land. It's community land. Whereas in a capitalist society, the employee only has his labor to sell and nothing else. Now, this produces a kind of business. A business is the kind of machinery and other things that produces the profit. So the business then is really what Milton Friedman, an economist, calls an artificial person. It's an idea, an entity, a concept. It isn't a thing in itself. It isn't this machine. It's not that building. It's the idea of whatever it is, be it a supermarket or a factory or whatever. These two things together produce large amounts of profit. And that large amount of profit goes to the person who owns the business. So profit is expenses so it's if you've got expenses on the one side and you've got the kind of the sale value on the other, what you sell it for, how much it is, this difference here, that's the profit. So as long as you sell it for more than you have paid, you will be making a profit. Now here, for instance, the expenses are the running of the machine, the owning of the machine, and the paying of the workers. And whatever the profit is, it goes to the shareholders. The shareholders are the owner or owners of the business, and they receive the profit. Okay, so this period after the enclosures was the Industrial Revolution. And this is really the birth of modern capitalism as we begin to understand it today. But in the beginning, capitalism was extremely brutal. Workers had no rights. There was no sense of social responsibility. The course that we're going to be looking at considers how best should we run a business or be employed in a business now in an ethical way. So there are various questions that we can ask in business ethics. For instance, social responsibility. So in what way does a business have a responsibility to its stakeholders? A stakeholder is different to a shareholder. A stakeholder is essentially someone affected by the business. So, who is affected? Well, the employees, the shareholders, the local community, the customers, all of these people are affected by the business. So the social responsibility might be for all of those people. But also, there isn't just questions of how the business should behave towards people, but also how should employees behave. At what point, if there is a point, should an employee who knows there's something going wrong blow the whistle? That is, tell the authorities what is going on, if it's something bad. We're going to look at a whole range of other questions as well, but those are two of the main kind of moral issues for a business. How does the business behave, and how do the employees behave? There are other bigger factors involved, like globalization, for instance, and how the development of world economies, what really began capitalism and is now so much bigger, how that affects the kind of local culture and society. But I think a final question we'll also ask is capitalism something that kind of helps humans flourish? Is capitalism good for people? So, is the idea of business to begin with a good idea or a bad idea? So, here are some of the questions we're going to ask: a history of the development of business, and some of the definitions that we'll be using throughout this part of the course.